Hey everybody, Mike here. Can you tell I'm excited? Starlink now has authority to operate in Canada. All the details on Canada, as well as updates from the rest of the world, coming up. On November 5th, Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, or ISED, tweeted out that it had granted authority for SpaceX to operate their Starlink constellation in Canada. Now, this is the second of two major regulatory milestones for Starlink in Canada. The first was the CRTC BITS license, Basic International Telecommunications Service. That was granted in October, and now this is the second and final major regulatory hurdle for launching Starlink in Canada. We still don't know when the beta will actually start, but according to the website SpaceQ, who sent emails directly to Elon Musk, he said that they should be able to start the beta within like a week or two after regulatory approval has been granted. So we should expect to see the beta starting up in potentially as soon as November, but definitely before the end of December. Now, just like the United States, we don't know which regions of the country will be selected first for service. We definitely have a lot of northern latitudes up here, so it'll be interesting to see how that beta rolls out. I don't have a beta license yet. I hope I get one very soon. If I do, I will definitely be posting a ton of details of all the tiniest minutiae and the bigger picture stuff. In the meantime, though, the beta has been progressing in the United States, and we've got a lot of really interesting data and pictures, so I'm going to show you some of those now. Okay, these photos are from a Reddit user, SC2 Racing. I've put a link to his profile and to this post in the description down below. So first up is the pricing. So this is the invoice that he paid in US dollars. For the Canadians up here north of the border, it's still not entirely clear how much this is going to cost us in Canada. That same website, SpaceQ, has asked Elon Musk about pricing in Canada, and I think it was a slightly ambiguous answer that it would be about the same. I imagine that means it will be the US dollar amount converted into Canadian dollars, and that's what we'll pay. It doesn't seem like they would go to a regional pricing where we also pay $4.99 Canadian, just because that would be, I think, a bit too much of a difference for us being that close together. But hopefully the pricing doesn't go too high just because we're in Canada, but we'll see as those first emails hopefully start to go out. Next up is some unboxing photos. I won't go through a lot of detail here because there are quite a few of these out on the internet now. But you do see the Starlink equipment all in the box there, everything connected together as it arrives. That's pretty cool. You see the Ethernet cable there. We've actually had users now as part of the public beta actually measure that, and it is 100 feet, kind of a confirmed length there. And you can see here a lot of detail that I've been waiting for is the actual connection point of the Ethernet into the antenna. So you can see it's permanently attached. This is not something you can disconnect to connect your own cable, or at least it doesn't appear to be any way to do that easily. So whatever installation you're doing, you will need to use the included cable. And if it's further than 100 feet from your house, you'll have to have some kind of an outdoor weather-tight enclosure to join the included cable with a cable that you supply to reach the rest of the way into your house. You can also see he's done some detailed measurements of the antenna pole itself. So you can see on the main diameter of the shaft is 1.5 inches right on, and the narrower part near the end where it would connect to the mounting bracket is about 1/10 of an inch smaller diameter. So it comes here as 1.41 inches using his calipers, which thank you very much for providing these accurate measurements. The Ethernet cable includes a choke on each end, and he's also provided some measurements of the diameter of that choke. You can see here at about 3/4 of an inch. This is important because it's at each end. If you're drilling a hole into your house in order to run this wire through, you need to make sure that the diameter is big enough to allow this choke to go through. So what he's done is actually mount the antenna using a traditional satellite dish. I think they call it a J-pole. And you can see here it's mounted to the side of his house. And then the J, that curve in the pole, gives it the vertical orientation, which he's just mounted the Starlink antenna right into. So that's an interesting mounting option that might be a little bit easier for some than actually drilling holes through the surface of your roof, which I definitely would not recommend. This one seems quite a bit safer in terms of a do-it-yourself job. And there's that final photo of the dish getting that clear view of the northern sky. Beautiful. Before we move on to the international updates, if you're getting value from this, hit the like button down below, subscribe, and use the bell icon so you get notified of updates as soon as they're posted. All right, first up is Australia. Things are moving along pretty quickly here. Australia has granted Starlink permission to operate with a carrier license. Now, Starlink has been doing this in many jurisdictions, but they actually applied under the name Tibro, which is orbit spelled backwards. And as they get licenses, they're actually renaming their companies to be Starlink whatever. So Starlink Canada, Starlink Australia, for every different region that they're operating in. So now Starlink Australia has their carrier license, and they've also applied and been granted licenses for 4 ground stations, 24 different frequencies, but 4 physical locations. And I apologize, I'm probably going to mispronounce these names, but they are in Broken Hill, Burowa, Wagon, and Pimba. So if anyone's watching from Australia and I've mangled those names, feel free to put the pronunciation guide down in the comments below, and I'll try to get it right next time. Next up is New Zealand. So I haven't actually found much information about New Zealand actually granting Starlink permission to operate their consumer service, but there is a lot of information about Starlink looking at setting up a ground station, possibly a control station as part of their overall global coverage in a southern region of New Zealand, and again I might mispronounce this too, called Awarua. And this is a region that's commonly used. It's got a big facility with high bandwidth connections, but it's so far removed from other man-made interference sources, and it's an extremely flat area that it makes an ideal place to get that coverage in that region of the world. So Starlink is working at getting licenses and installation set up there to manage the constellation. Next up is the EU. SpaceX has a few different activities going on here for authority. The first up is in France, where SpaceX has applied to run 3 different ground stations. And I've got an image here produced by the Mega Constellati Twitter group. I've got that here with the link down below as well to the original. And you can see by these strategic places in France, they've got pretty dramatic coverage over the entire EU region just by placing these ground stations in France. Now, I imagine they will also be deploying more in other countries as they get approval, but you can see, but even just from these 3, they'll get significant coverage just from that. It has been reported that in the EU, Starlink will need to get authority from every single member nation of the EU in order to operate over the region of each country. So it's not a matter of getting a single license with the EU and being able to cover the entire European Union. It's going to be approvals from every different member state. And of course, plus the UK now, no longer part of the EU, will have to be authorized there as well. Now, we know that latitude-wise, Europe does have kind of a sweet spot range. Much of the European Union is within the current coverage band in terms of latitude, but we know that Starlink has only talked about service in Canada and the US so far. So it'll be interesting to see how that rolls out, and I'm watching the regulatory process as much as I can find. My German and my French are a little bit rusty, but I'm doing my best with Google Translate to find out what's going on and how the service is going to be rolling out there as well. The last little update, not a lot of details here, but Starlink is also talking to Mexico, their equivalent of the FCC, to what appears to be get authority to operate there as well. Now, clearly Mexico is quite a bit more south, so this is, or at least appears to be, kind of preliminary work for as the constellation coverage starts to extend much further south to begin offering service there. So exciting, exciting times. A lot going on. Big on my mind, of course, as a Canadian, is when the first beta updates will actually go out in Canada. So I'll be watching that very closely and putting out an update as soon as I can. So like always, keep watching here for updates. I'm going to get all the news out as soon as I can. Thank you all for watching. See you next time.